Good Tuesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Browns out in Berea, actually on the practice field for day one of voluntary veterans minicamp. That means guys actually doing football things. Deshaun Watson out there playing football, throwing the football around as the Browns, there you see Watson getting some work in. Out in Berea, first practice doing football drills under Todd Monken. There's Shedeur Sanders with a couple of throws as well. Again, just shorts, helmets, no shoulder pads or anything. Pretty good throw over the middle by Shedeur Sanders. This one a little bit behind. Receiver makes a nice adjustment by Deshaun Watson. Shedeur Sanders in 11-on-11 to Isaiah Bond. Take a look at the new veteran linebacker, Quincy Williams. Dives in, knocks the pass down. Again, nothing crazy, but it is football going on with Todd Monken and the Browns. Offensive line will obviously be something that the Browns continue to talk about through the draft and into OTAs and into training camp. Todd Monken talked about what he saw day one of voluntary minicamp from the O-line.
Really good about the linemen that we've signed. Obviously, Eldon's coming back from an injury, so that's a part of it. But getting Titus, also getting Zion, and then we'll see what happens in the draft. I like the guys that we had coming back. There's some young guys that you like, some depth there. So, again, it's the first day. Probably the hardest to gauge is the line without the shoulder pads on, and some of your skill guys' physicality. But, again, I'm excited about what we have and what we're going to add to the room.
And that would be in the draft. Browns definitely need to improve that offensive line without question. Adam Schefter, ESPN's draft analyst, talking about the 6th pick in the NFL draft for the Browns and what he's hearing.
Perfect scenario for the Cleveland Browns. They trade back in the draft. There already have been some exploratory calls. I think the Browns would like to go back. And I think most people around the league believe the Cleveland Browns would love somehow to come out of the first round where they're currently scheduled to pick 6th and 24th with, in no particular order, a offensive tackle and a wide receiver. Now, it could be wide receiver, offensive tackle. It could be offensive tackle, wide receiver. It could be trade back. Trade back would be preferable to this team. I think that's what a lot of people feel like they would love to do. Their offensive line has had to be rebuilt. There are some prospects there that they obviously could draft. Francis Mauigoa may be there at number 70 or 60. You take him. Caden Proctor is somebody that I believe appeals to them with the mass that he has and the talent that he possesses. And then what wide receiver do they do? But I think when we get done with the first round, I think you're going to see a new tackle and a wide receiver in no particular order for the Cleveland Browns.
Again, draft is a couple days away. Thursday is round 1. Longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi on any potential surprises that he thinks the Browns may have in round 1 of the draft.
What would surprise you at either 6 or 24 if it's not tackle wide receiver?
The biggest surprise would be any other position other than defensive end. Okay, I would be surprised if they took a defensive end.
I had a mock today that had the Browns taking Bain at 6. Is that in play?
That would be a
Miles,
bombshell. Yeah.
So what they're referring to at the end of that clip is if they draft a defensive end high in the draft, the thought is that there would be potentially a Myles Garrett trade coming in June. Again, we'll see. I think you might be putting 1 and 1 together and coming up with 11. I could be wrong about that. Former John Carroll wide receiver Tyron Montgomery on the Browns potentially drafting him. This is from 92.3 The Fan.
It mean a lot. You know, that'd be great. You know, to have quarterback Shedeur Sanders throwing me the ball. It would be nice. I mean, I'll be coming back to Cleveland. I mean, I was just there a few months ago, so it would be a familiar territory for sure. If the Cleveland Browns decide to come get me, then, you know, go Browns, you're gonna go crazy. But you know, if if the cards are played in a different way, then I'm gonna make the most of my opportunity.
Played well in the Senior Bowl, had a great week of practice, so Montgomery probably will be a day 3 pick. We'll see. Let's turn our attention to the Guardians. Opening up a 3-game series with the Astros. Slade Ciccone on the mound for the Guardians and in trouble early. First inning, Christian Walker gets all of that one, leaves the yard in a hurry. 2-run homer, made it 2-0 Astros. 3-2 Astros in the fourth. Isaac Paredes, that one goes even further. It is a fair ball and a home run. Then in the ninth, relief pitcher on, Paredes, another home run, 9-2. The Astros all over the Guardians. Not a good start for Slade Ciccone as the Astros take game one of that 3-game series. Game 2 tonight, Parker Messick goes against Ryan Weiss. For the Astros. Let's turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Game 2 against the Toronto Raptors in their playoff series last night. Cavs up 6 midway through the fourth quarter. James Harden to Max Strus. He knocks down the open 3. Cavs open up the lead. Harden on the drive, tosses that one up and in for the layup. Donovan Mitchell, a lot of space. Can't give him that much. He knocks down the 3-pointer. 12-point lead for the Cavs, 102-90. Mitchell drives in for the layup that time as Mitchell, Harden, and Mobley all with 20-plus points. Donovan Mitchell talked about what he saw from the Cavs in Game 2 last night.
I think we did a solid job. Obviously, there's things we can clean up, but I agree. I mean, this is one of those situations where, they were going to respond, and you got to give them credit. They did. And for us, just continue to stay mentally even keel throughout the whole. They made a run. They got it close, but we did what we were supposed to do. And now next game is going to be the hardest game for us. So trying to keep the same mindset.
We will have Cavs talk coming up in just a minute with Ethan Sands. Cavs take a 2-0 lead. Game 3 will be Thursday night in Toronto. So first road game. Cavs with a 2-0 lead on that first round playoff series with the Raptors. Ethan Sands is up first. We're talking Cavs when Sports4CLE returns. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
Cavs are up first on Sports4CLE. ESPN's national NBA analyst Brian Windhorst with his thoughts on how the Cavs have defended the Raptors.
I love what I've seen from them defensively. I love it. The challenging at the rim, fighting through screens, fighting through, just forced into switches. They don't just allow it. Their intensity level defensively has been really good. When I watch how Dean Wade is competing and just not really letting Brandon Ingram get the ball, and really Dean's doing a lot of the work before the ball even enters the half court because they're making the Raptors really run actions just to get Ingram the ball. Now, having said that, they were able to generate quite a few open looks for Ingram last night.
Yeah.
And he just missed them.
Yeah.
Also, Mobley and Allen blocked him at the rim.
With that, let's welcome in Ethan Sands, Cavs beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Ethan, what have you thought? 2-0 so far. They did what they should do. They won at home. What have been the takeaways from the first 2 games for you?
Well, to echo Brian Windhorst, the defense has been impeccable. It has been a step up than what it was in the regular season, and in many capacities it's maybe because of Dean Wade, and not necessarily only because of his defense against Brandon Ingram, although that has been his main assignment, but his physicality, top blocking off screens, setting up so he is not available to get the ball as easily. And that also makes it difficult for Brandon Ingram. We understand that some of these open looks that he's getting, he's missing because he has to exert himself so heavily. And it's not just Dean Wade, also Max Strus, Sam Merrill, having been undersized, still accepting their assignments, being physical, being strong on the defensive end of the ball, and making everybody work, even when having to go through screening actions. I think we've seen how difficult it is for this Toronto Raptors team to create offense, but also understanding that they're not a three-point shooting team. So the math is not going to swing in their favor. And even against the Cavs on game one, we knew they shot the ball well, but they regressed back to their mean 7 of 26, 26.9%. in game two. That's their normal, right? That's necessarily where they're going to be at, because they don't have the same capabilities, especially with Emmanuel quickly being sidelined with a hamstring injury. This Toronto Raptors offense is struggling, and obviously we understood that there were no questions for this Cavs offense coming in. It was just about how many points were they going to be able to put up, because the Toronto Raptors simply haven't had answers for them on offense, and simply haven't had answers for them on either sides of the ball, if we're being frank.
James Harden has looked really good. He was asked what's worked so well for the Cavs defensively in the first two games of the series.
I think just understanding what their actions are, what they're trying to do, and then just being prepared for it. They've run different actions, like me for the most part guarding RJ Barrett. Just he's strong left hand, so just finding out what they're trying to do. Obviously, they're going to make an adjustment for Game 3, figuring out what they're doing, as quick as possible, and then just trying to, be a ball hawk. But
hog or hawk?
Hawk, like attack the ball. Anyways, yeah, just figuring out what they're doing and being aggressive defensively. I think all of us, if we're aggressive defensively, we got rim protection, good things will happen for us.
Ethan, you alluded to it. You saw a little bit of the chemistry that's already developed between Donovan Mitchell and James Harden there, but you alluded to it. They've been more physical than we've seen them the last couple of years. You can see that. You don't need to go in 4 or 5 games in. They just have to maintain that physicality.
I agree with you. And funny enough, I think that was my question to James Harden last night about how the defense is coming together. James Harden is not necessarily being asked to be a wall-to-wall defender, a body-to-body defender. He's using his IQ and playing in the gaps. He came away with 5 steals, right? And that's physicality is because of what is being done at the point of attack, whether that's Keon Ellis as well, Dean Wade, Max Strus, Sam Merrill, as I mentioned. This Cavs team is coming together really nicely and playing on both ends of the ball with synergy, and we're continuously seeing that they're growing together. We understand that Donovan Mitchell and James Harden haven't even played 30 games together this season, and yet they built this chemistry to not only rely on one another on the offensive end, but communicating in where things might go wrong and where things can be better. There was a play last night where Donovan Mitchell ended up scoring the basketball, and the Toronto Raptors had to call a timeout. And still, before they even got to the bench to discuss with their teammates or Kenny Atkinson, James Harden stopped Donovan Mitchell and was like, hey, I saw a different read where you could have had an easier look, had a cleaner feel for the game, and they discussed it, and then they rehashed it and actually acted on it in the next play. So I think the continuous learning, the continuous growth in real time is helping them become a better team on the fly, and that's going to bode well, not just for the remainder of the first round, for as far as they go in this playoff run.
All right, so Kenny Atkinson was asked about Dean Wade and his defense against Brandon Ingram. Ingram, 7 points, 3 of 15 from the field. Here's Atkinson.
It's a luxury to have a stopper, a 6'9" wing that can use as a stopper. You can use him on a point guard. You can use him as a wing. He's been phenomenal so far. I know BI. He's going to keep coming at you. But Dean made him work for everything he got. We obviously have the 2 big guys back there, so we're leaning on that too, right? It's Dean, and then that support from our big guys. We kind of figured out how to help, who to help off of, all that. But most of the credit goes to Dean. Incredible physicality, and he's doing it without putting BI on the line. He's a great foul drawer, and Dean's been really disciplined with that.
So Wade's been great. The whole team has been physical. The other thing to think about here, and I'm curious your take on this, they're playing 10 guys. Thomas Bryant hasn't been able to play. They have a lot of different answers for any changeup that occurs here.
Yeah, I think it's completely interesting, right? And to go to your point about the combinations and the changes, and Kenny Atkinson mentioned it yesterday, Dean Wade has guarded Brandon Ingram for 12 minutes in this postseason already. Brandon Ingram in that matchup is 1 of 6, 16.7% from the field. And that just shows the difficulty of what Dean Wade is doing, but also understanding that even if there was some change that the Cavs or the Raptors were going to make, which meant, hey, how we're going to get actions for Brandon Ingram, how are we going to get him involved? There's multiple things that the Cavs are doing, whether it's switching, whether it's denying the ball and separating Brandon Ingram from the floor entirely, which makes the rest of the offense have to do what it does. And we obviously already talked about Toronto not necessarily having a whole lot of creators outside of Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, and RJ Barrett. But then also on the offensive end, the Toronto Raptors have already been seen changing their scheme of playing with different players on Donovan Mitchell and James Harden, understanding that Scotty Barnes is their best defender. But if you take Scotty Barnes out of a play defensively and you take him away from the rim guarding Donovan Mitchell or James Harden on any given play, it separates him for the rest of the core of their defense, which allows Evan Mobley to be active in the painted area. We saw that in yesterday's game where those three, James Harden, Donovan Mitchell, and Evan Mobley, combined for 83 points because whatever the Raptors were throwing at them, the Cavs had an answer. That also stems to the isolation game and creativity of James Harden and Donovan Mitchell being able to get mismatches, being able to get switches, and then simply go mano a mano against the defender because of their acumen, because of their skill set. And I think that can't go unsaid and unnoticed because it opens up the floor for everyone around them. Sam Merrill, Max Strus's spacing, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen's verticality, and then the one-on-one opportunities. I feel like there's a flow on both ends of the floor that the Cavs are utilizing and have that they simply didn't have at the beginning of the season. It could be effort, it could be focus, and it could also just be that the Toronto Raptors aren't good enough to compete with the Cleveland Cavaliers in a 7-game series.
So Game 3 goes to Toronto coming up Thursday. Kenny Atkinson asked what the message is to the Cavs ahead of Game 3.
I mean, we have a veteran group, you know. I think they understand, you know, we don't want to come back to Cleveland 2-2, right? Like that's so, you know, Game 3 is one. You would hope they hit us with they hit us with a hard shot today. You know, they're going to have to do it again. Obviously, going to be home with one of the best crowds in the NBA, so that'll give them a boost. But we're going to have to resist, right? Resist their first hit physically, and then you know mentally deal with that being on the road. But again, we have a veteran group that's been through those games. So, but important game for us. It'd be huge to go up 3.
So Ethan, this is kind of how they react to this will tell me where they're at relative to playoff basketball. I think Kenny's thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I think this team is super mature. It's more mature than any team that they've had in recent years. And obviously there could be a complacency. There could be a satisfaction of being where they are, up 2-0, but there hasn't had that feel in this locker room. James Harden continues to say that they haven't played well, either Game 1 or Game 2, and that they can find areas where they can improve. And that's not necessarily because of what they're going up against in Toronto. And they're not looking forward. It's simply in preparation for what is to come and focusing internally on how they can improve their game plan, their structure, their sets, because every game is like a practice to them. Every game is preparing for what is next on their ledger. And I think the Cavs' maturity is showcasing that. And sure, the possibility for the Cavs to drop Game 4 at an afternoon game in Toronto is there, but I don't think that the complacency is set in for this Cavs team. I think they understand the responsibility of where they want to go, and their legacies are not going to be stitched or etched into the record books because of a first-round series. They remember what happened against Miami in the first round of last year, and then how just 2 weeks later they were sent packing. So I think they understand where they want to go, who they want to be, and that is not going to be defined in a first-round series or a first-round series win against Toronto, but they want to get them out the way so they can get some more practice in, get some more rest, and be prepared for whoever is next.
Ethan Sands, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Ethan.
Thank you for having me on.
Ethan Sands, make sure you check him out. Cavs beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. We're going to take a quick timeout. We turn our attention to the Browns. Jared Mueller, Dawgs by Nature. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We turn our attention to the Browns on Sports4CLE. Showed you earlier Browns' first day of voluntary veterans mini camp. They're out on the field. Not on the field were Jerry Jeudy, Myles Garrett, Grant Delpit, Denzel Ward. Veterans not in attendance for voluntary mini camp. Todd Monken asked a couple of times about Myles Garrett's absence.
It hasn't been a lot. It's fine. This is voluntary. We're making a big deal out of this. We really are. It's voluntary. We have other guys besides Myles that aren't here. I wish they were here. They'll be ready. We expect them to be ready, and we'll be fired up when they're here.
So guys like Ward and Jeudy, were you informed I'm not going to be there?
Yes, we were informed. Yes. And really all of the players have informed us. They've been unbelievable with their communication. So is Myles. I mean, they've communicated, okay? Doesn't mean I like the communication, but it's voluntary. Like I wish they were all here, right? I mean, I've said that plenty of times. But every one of them is a Brown, and we're excited that they are. Myles and I have communicated by text. But I've not spoken to him in person. I can't speak for Rudy.
With that, let's welcome in Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature. Jared, there's a couple questions about that. I know you've written about Myles. The whole pushing back his bonus to post June 1st is the reason. I don't see it as a big deal. I suppose it could be.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I think in the end, it's how everything adds together, right? Like, he's not there. It's voluntary. It's not a big deal, right? I can tell you I've been at those practices, including when Odell Beckham Jr. would not come to them. And it is a question for any big-name player, why are they not there? Do you want them to be there? It is voluntary, and so coaches understand that. They want them to be there, like Monken said, but it's a voluntary activity. I think it just all plays together. He demanded a trade last year, and the team was not very good again, right? He got a new contract, and now he's about $10 million less per year than the top of the market already. He, pushes back this date, which didn't have a lot of benefit for him. There's a little bit of benefit for him with his contract, but overall, it all just seems to be pointing in a similar direction to the A.J. Brown saga, where everyone knows he's getting traded. Everyone has a good idea where he's getting traded, but he cannot be traded till June 2nd. And so it's very possible that the Myles Garrett stuff is just a little more buttoned up and a much larger trade, but there's no chance that's going to happen before June 2nd anyways. So it's just a timing thing. That doesn't mean he's going to be traded, but there's just so many little pieces that make it understandable that they continue to ask the question.
All right, Shedeur Sanders, again, asked about first time doing football work under Todd Monken.
Practice was great today. It's a lot of new energy. It's a lot of great new players we have, and I'm loving what we're doing.
What's your mindset after your rookie season? It seemed like you spent a lot of time in Cleveland working out. Why was it important for you to be here instead of go anywhere else and work out?
Well, this is the most important thing I have to do in my life. I have a house here. I'm comfortable, and I wanted to take everything to the next level within myself. I know it's some things that I wanted to like improve, and I took a lot of time to like self-reflect and just view a lot of things just from a different perspective, honestly. And I think I covered a lot of ground with that.
Jared, there's an opportunity for him. He goes out and plays well. Anything can happen.
Absolutely. And I think the reality is no matter what side of the Shedeur Sanders argument discussion you're on, it is the best case scenario for the Browns if Shedeur Sanders is a franchise level quarterback, even if that is a top 20, top 15 level quarterback, even if it's not Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Brock Purdy even, that is the best case scenario for the Browns. And as long as, like we saw in free agency, Andrew Berry continues to look at the offensive line and the wide receiver group or the tight end group, he's going to have that opportunity, right? And so he's got to make the most of it. And I think he's saying the right things, but he's also doing the right things, staying in town, focusing on the things that he needs to improve, while also hoping the weapons and the offensive system around him maybe fit a little bit better and allow him to be successful.
So a lot was made about reps with quarterbacks, not only last year, but this year and leading into this. Todd Monken was asked about that for the first day of voluntary minicamp.
We were just rotating who was first reps. Shedeur to start. There were some other reps. The way it was going to turn out, Shedeur was going to get more reps, some of it in pass skelly, some of it in team. A couple of the team periods were slowed down ACT, more run than they were throw. So it was set up in a way for us to get a look at all of them. The plan was to have Shedeur have a few more reps, but to let Deshaun and Shedeur both have reps with the ones. No, ball's coming out great. Looks great. I haven't seen that. I can't get into his body to know how his body felt today, but he moved around great and the ball came out great.
And the back half of that, he's talking about Deshaun Watson. Again, not going to know anything relative to this until August at the earliest.
I think it's really interesting. Monken said last year was going to decide how this year started. Shedeur Sanders played last year. Dylan Gabriel was the backup, and Deshaun Watson wasn't on the field. So nobody's surprised if Todd Monken is a man of his word. He's very straightforward. Doesn't seem to be veiling any of his comments at all. But I think overall, 2026 is at least at a minimum starting to feel or starting out like a lot like 2025. Let's just hope, like Monken said at the Combine, he has a better idea who the starter is much sooner than they had last year.
All right, draft coming up in a couple of days. Todd Monken asked him if getting a look at the team kind of helps in preparation for that.
Well, first of all, it's awesome no matter when the draft is. I think pretty much, I would guess that'd be a question for Andrew. I would guess, irrespective of what happens here, because we're really in shorts, that we're already set in terms of what we're thinking for the draft. Maybe not complete, but ought to be damn close, at this point. So the bottom line is this just happens to get us a little bit of a preview on what we have and really get the system and the foundation set.
So, Jared, I play that because I know you wrote an article about the draft class full of blessings and curses for the Browns. Take us through that.
Yeah, it's one of the most interesting draft classes I've seen in a long time, as well as informationally, right? Like the amount of information and disinformation this year is unique. I would say at this point, I don't think anyone knows what anyone is going to do. But I think this draft class has a lot of depth, especially at the positions that the Browns need. And so unlike some draft classes where there's one wide receiver, one offensive tackle, I think there's some blessings in the fact that we can have the arguments and the discussions, something we welcome at Dawgs by Nature of really who's the right wide receiver for the Browns. Should they go wide receiver then offensive tackle then wide receiver? Should they trade down? All of that. I think there's some blessings with this draft class just in kind of where the depth is. I joked a little bit in that article just because I find every little thing fun. The Browns have a lot of draft picks, which is always a really good place to be. But this is a draft where at the top of the draft, there is only a couple of kind of premium position players, and those are at positions that the Browns are most likely not going to address. So it gives them some trade opportunities. And with those extra draft picks, this draft is in Pittsburgh. Those Steelers fans are going to have to hear the words Cleveland Browns a lot, especially if they're involved in some trades. So I just enjoy the little bit of pettiness to that. But obviously there's no top quarterback. There's no Jamar Chase wide receiver, Kelvin Johnson wide receiver. There's no certainty of who that top offensive tackle is. So there are some curses with this draft where, for fans and analysts, we wish there was this player, that player. Even the fact that the Browns won their last 2 games, if they hadn't and everything else had stayed the same, the Browns would most likely be selecting Mendoza number 1 overall, because that's how it would have played out if the Browns had lost their last 2 games.
Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we will continue to dive a little bit deeper into the upcoming draft. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little flag in your day. Put a little flag in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature, longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi with his thoughts on Caden Proctor. This from ESPN Cleveland.
Caden Proctor is the top tackle on Andrew Berry's tackle board. Fact or fiction?
I got to say fiction. Now, that doesn't mean they're not interested in him, but taking a tackle at number 6 and announcing Caden Proctor, that is going to be a buzzkill.
Briz, look at me. I think it's I think Alabama offensive tackle, that has Andrew Berry all over it.
Briz, it's like watching a bad dream and not being able to stop it.
Chris, go ahead.
Oh, that's a fact. An
No,
Alabama
Chris.
mountain man? Are you kidding me? Andrew Berry is salivating.
Chris, you've already nicknamed him Alabama Mountain Man.
Jared, I have the same recurring nightmare, and the reference is to Jedrick Wills, who was drafted 10th overall. Man, I hope that's not the pick at 6. I'm just going to say it.
and unfortunately for your wishes, starting back at the Combine and then since then, whether it was Jeff Risdon, who covered the Browns for a long time and does a great job with his work covering the Lions in the draft, Field Yates, Todd McShay, and just some people that I've talked to, there is a lot of belief that Caden Proctor will be the best left tackle coming out of this draft, or a bust, right? Which is exactly why everyone is afraid. But the upside, the athleticism, the skill set, it's all there. Now, it's very possible that the Proctor rumors or push is because there's some belief that the Lions are really interested in him. And so that could lead to some trade action, those kind of things. But just to be honest, at this point, like I said, I'm not sure anything that could happen in this draft will really actually surprise me. And I think the reality is we're starting to see more and more how draft analysts and what we like is influencing fans in a lot of ways. Whereas Caden Proctor, even if you compare him to Mekhi Becton the same year as Jedrick Wills, there were fans just pounding the table for this big, massive, athletic player who is similar to kind of a Ronnie Stanley, who, Monken is very familiar with Baltimore. Fans love them, but we haven't talked about Proctor in the same positive light for some reason.
All right. You wrote a couple of articles that I want to kind of combine. One of them, new trade down rumors for the Browns, a new option. And then the Browns, Chiefs among 4 teams that are involved in trade talks with the Browns. Take us through those 2 and kind of what the buzz is around the Browns trading back.
Yeah, the Browns are in a really unique position. The Dallas Cowboys have been a huge kind of rumored partner for them, and there's a lot of reasons for that, just how hard it would be to get up to number 2 or number 3. And then you're talking about, the Giants and Washington and, some other people in there, Tennessee Titans, it just doesn't make as much sense for some of those teams to trade back, even though they talk about wanting to trade back. I don't think, Washington, New York, that's going to be tough for Dallas to pull off. And so there are really only a couple of teams that seem likely to be aggressive, whether that's aggressive trading a first or a second round pick in 2027, something that every team values right now. The Kansas City Chiefs, they seem to have their eye on someone, just not totally sure who that someone is. They've talked to the Cardinals at number 3. Everybody is thinking, is it Jeremiah Love? Is it Arvell Reese? Is it David Bailey? But the Chiefs, the Rams, and the Cowboys are 3 teams that seem like they're ready to move up. The Rams have been brought up today as a possible aggressive trade partner to try to get up and get Carnell Tate or Jordan Tyson. And then, quite simply, the Washington Commanders really want Carnell Tate, and if they're worried about the Browns getting him at 6, do they kind of pull the opposite move that the Browns and Ravens pulled years ago with the Haloti Ngata, Kellen Winslow trade and just move up 1 to make sure they get Carnell Tate? The Browns really are it's the Cardinals at 3 and the Browns at 6, where really a lot of the moves seem to make a lot of sense. Robert Saleh at number 4 does not want to start his second head coaching job trading back. He wants an impact player at that position. So, and the Jets seem like they're locked into a defensive end. So the Browns really do seem kind of like the hub at this point in time of realistic trade-up possibilities. Rams, Commanders, Cowboys, Chiefs, all might circle that pick as one they want to get to.
All right. You also wrote an article about trading out of the top 10 the last 10 years. Take us through that and what you found. You did some digging and just kind of comparing and what'd you find?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting, and listen, Browns fans, not PTSD in the official sense, but the trauma of trade down is real, right? They all know the Julio Jones trades and all the different ones that have happened. But in the last 10 years, the only really bad trade down out of the top 10, surprise, surprise, was the Cleveland Browns trading down and then selecting Corey Coleman, which obviously turned out poorly at long term. We can kind of see that. Beyond that, all of the different trades that we've seen generally have worked out pretty well or very well, including the Browns last year so far, trading out of a top 10 pick. Now, the Browns trading from 2 to 5 is different than the Browns trading from 6 to 12, obviously, but unfortunately, the Browns' history long-term is that trading down is a bad thing. The recent history is, it seems like general managers and front office across the league are making wiser decisions with those trade downs and being a little more selective about making those moves, not just trading down for the sake of trading down.
What about the offensive prospects? How many elite offensive prospects are actually in this draft? Because if you look at them, that's kind of what the Browns need. They need some guys on offense that can make plays.
One. There is one elite prospect on the offensive side of the ball, and that is Jeremiah Love. And while there can be lots of conversation about Jeremiah Love, that would be poor asset management. To draft somebody in the first round who's going to take 50% of the carries away from your second-round pick last year, and to have a second-round pick last year who's going to take 50% of the carries away from your first-round pick this year, just isn't really good asset development. Otherwise, we have a lot of really good offensive tackles, a lot of really good wide receivers. We have one tight end that might go in the first round, but even that might be, there's not a lot of other options that are first-round picks. There just is not the elite prospects that the Browns need, which is why a trade down, at least logically, makes a lot of sense if you cannot get an elite prospect. They just don't exist. Listen, Carnell Tate is a very good wide receiver. In 5 years, if the Browns draft him, most people are going to see him similar to a T. Higgins, which is he is really good. He cannot be your number one wide receiver on an elite offense and a Super Bowl contender. And so if I have the choice between a 1B receiver or a 1B tackle, or trading down and still getting a 1B receiver or a 1B tackle, that's where we start to make a lot of sense to add those extra resources, with just Jeremiah Love really kind of standing out, at least as a prospect. Doesn't mean they won't be great pros, but we can only evaluate what we know right now.
All right. You also wrote another one, draft plans. Expect the unexpected, surprise in the first round for the Browns. Where are you going with that one?
Well, when you look at when Jeremy Fowler says that, right? And so Browns fans have been kind of just expecting offensive tackle, wide receiver, offensive tackle. Trade can be a part of that, but that's generally been the expectation of fans and media. But when Jeremy Fowler is saying the same thing, that you read the tea leaves. How many people knew that the Browns were drafting Travis Hunter, number 2 overall, even as of Tuesday before the draft? Right? I got word shortly before the first pick happened that the Browns were trading down, but everyone knew for sure, locked in, Travis Hunter, number 2 overall. And so the idea that the Browns, the rumors, the noise is offensive tackle, wide receiver, trade down, tells me we better be ready for some kind of surprise. And again, not to assume a Myles Garrett trade is going to happen, but if you see a defensive end, if you see an Arvell Reese slide a little bit, a David Bailey slide a little bit, even a Sonny Styles, and you have some creativity about how the defense is going to run, it might tell us a little bit about what might happen on June 2nd. I just think we start to set ourselves up, media and fans, when we think about these obvious needs, and as if these obvious needs need to be filled in the first round. The Browns and Andrew Berry, I think this year, used the word best available value long-term. And long-term value isn't about needs this year. It's about where is the value in this draft and where is the value for the players. That's why, again, Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese, maybe a Caleb Downs at the top of the draft, but even later, kid out of Toledo, the safety, EMW, he's someone you could see the Browns drafting instead of a wide receiver, instead of an offensive tackle, as they look to really see what is long-term best for this team.
Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature and I are going to step aside, take one more time out, other side of the break. A little bit more about the draft, Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature. Jared, again, you're talking about draft strategy, positional value, defined by contract values. We did this a little bit earlier in the week because a couple of people have come on and said, well, left tackle is a premium position. If you look at the contract values, wide receiver has become a darn expensive position. Averages, the top 10 contracts are $10 million more than the left tackles per year.
Yeah, and I think what really that argument in the discussion is really the league shows you what they value based on either where they're drafting or where they're paying contracts. And so the idea that wide receivers continue to get paid just at an extreme level is interesting for 2 reasons. One, it actually is mostly saying there are a lot more good wide receivers than there are offensive tackles, because you have a lot more receivers making that $20 million then you really have, you have the top 10, 15 offensive tackles, right? But part of that argument is also when you look at like the safety position and the running back position, right? And the average starting running back is making $7 million. Great. The average running back is making less than $3 million and is paid down there near the fullbacks, the kickers, the punters, and the long snappers, right? And so in general, starting running backs are still valuable. They're at the bottom of kind of those starter important positions. But, I think in general, you have to look at, we can talk all about impact and what we think impact is, but the league is telling us wide receiver, offensive tackle, edge rusher are really kind of where the money goes. And that is telling us those are the really valuable positions. I do think the depth conversation is really important, because if I've got 30 wide receivers making good money and only 10 offensive tackles, that's going to skew things a little bit. And so less offensive tackles available generally, a lot more wide receivers continue to get paid and continue to earn that big contract.
Let's talk a little bit about Carnell Tate. That's a guy that a number of Browns fans, I don't know if it's most, a lot of Browns fans would like to see them take at 6. What do you think about him not testing, the lack of testing, we'll call it? What did that do to him?
So it's interesting. Dane Brugler, obviously the author of The Beast, a great draft expert, reported that the Browns passed on Ted McMillan last year because they didn't have testing data. So I think Carnell Tate, did he seal his fate? Probably not. But is it possible that the Browns look at the lack of testing data? Obviously, you have Jeremiah Smith on the other side, long been talked about. How do you know really what Carnell Tate is when he's not testing, right? When he's not showing what he really has when it comes to change of direction, explosiveness, those kinds of things. And so I think it's just a really interesting piece of information. I also think, and this is where Ohio State being wide receiver U is great for Carnell Tate, but I also think because Marvin Harrison didn't do any of the testing, there is some concern because part of Marvin Harrison's struggles in the NFL have been his ability to kind of separate and create and be as explosive as he seemed to be at Ohio State, right? You can tell me film doesn't lie, but if that film is against me, if I'm the cornerback, just because you blew by me doesn't mean anything, right? And so that's why testing is so important, is to show me, how did you win? And Carnell Tate, like Tech McMillan last year, doesn't give the information the Browns need to let them know how did he win at the college level.
All right, along those lines, this is you used Super Bowl Nation as a basis. You wrote an article about the best receivers with some of the important skill sets. Best chance to be a true number one, Casey Concepcion or Tate. Contested catch guy, Denzel Boston. Best hands, Tate. Executing routes that are asked to be run, Surratt from Indiana, who's interesting. Separation created, Casey Concepcion. Boomer bust potential, Brazil from Tennessee. You look at that. Who is the guy you like relative to wide receivers? Mine's not on there. I like Mekhi Lemon.
Yeah, Lemon is good. I do have some concerns just about frame and some of the kind of things that, maybe don't matter, but they matter when they matter kind of thing. For me, it's actually two. I love Casey Concepcion. The drops are a real issue, but the quarterback play, the lack of spirals, the lack of direct location of where that ball should be is a reason many of those drops are what they are. He has some things to work on, obviously, but he creates some really great separation and yards after catch. Maybe a little too close to Jerry Jeudy, but that's where someone like Denzel Boston, I really like a little bit more of a size guy who can win kind of those back shoulder and some of those jump ball kind of things, and how that could unlock Jerry Jeudy on the other side. So those are the two guys for me outside of Tate, right? I think Tate is going to be a very good pro prospect, but for me, it's Casey Concepcion, and then it's Denzel Boston.
All right, you wrote an article about 5 risers. Take us through those, who you like, or who is rising up the board, if you will.
So there's been a lot of guys that have. Monroe Freeland would be the one everybody knows about. That is a guy that at the beginning of the draft process, half the fans didn't know, and a third of the media didn't even really know about him much. And so I think he's the one guy to kind of keep the most eye on. This one wasn't even in that article because things have changed, but Garrett Nussmeier had a lot of people who loved him last year, right? And so you don't always know why a prospect falls, right? Cade Klubnik was someone we had mocked to the Browns in the top 5 after last year's draft. And so Garrett Nussmeier, some new information about his medicals actually should see him rising up the boards, potentially to be the 3rd quarterback off the board. And that's partially because Ty Simpson, the Arizona Cardinals love him, and it seems like they're going to do whatever they can to draft him. But Garrett Nussmeier is now a quarterback who, in many ways, if there wasn't an explanation for last year medically where he has this kind of cyst on his back, was probably closer to a 5th-round pick, and now could see himself somewhere in that mid to late 2nd round, maybe even early 3rd round, which, again, it'll be interesting to see how the Browns see this quarterback class. Is there a use to adding another quarterback given what you have in Watson, Sanders, and then obviously Dylan Gabriel is still on the roster?
All right, before I let you go, your dream scenario for the Browns, give me the top 3. If they come away with these 3 guys, first 3 picks, you think the roster is better?
Yeah, that's a great. To be honest, and I hate to say this, but I think the first is a 27 pick, right? So they have a 2nd or a 1st-round pick coming out of the 2027 draft. I think that's just going to be such an important part of the process for them. For me, otherwise, I really think at this point, Monroe Freeland, Casey Concepcion, and then I really would kind of double up on the wide receivers somewhat early, maybe not the 3rd pick, but Jacoby Lane is someone out of USC I think could also be a really nice size-oriented wide receiver. And so you add those 3, a left tackle with Freeling, Concepcion, who is going to be an electric player with the ball in his hands, and then a Lane who can kind of make those plays on the outside. I think you can reinvent this offense relatively quickly, as long as, again, either Sanders, Watson, or Gabriel is replacement level quarterback play.
Jared Mueller, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jared.
Absolutely, brother. Good to see you.
Jared Mueller, make sure you check him out. Dawgs by Nature. You'll enjoy what you see with their coverage of the Browns. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Film breakdown video analysis of his mock draft for the Browns. That's coming up on Sports for CLE. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little flag in your day. Put a little flag in your day.
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. Let's welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Lance, mock draft, so first 5 picks for the Browns, assuming they don't trade. So these are 6, 24, 39, 70, and 107.
Certain guys, and once again, I'm going to say impact. Now, I don't think he's Ed Reed. I'm not sure if he'll ever be Ed Reed. That's not fair because I think Ed Reed's one of the best football players ever. But Caleb Downs has that type of impact. And when you have that type of impact, it's hard for me to say, you know what, I'm not going to take a guy because we have needs at other places. I'm not going to take other guys that maybe I don't think are as good as Caleb Downs. And for 2 years now, I've watched Caleb Downs on film, and he's much better than everybody he's playing against really high-level competition in both the SEC and the Big Ten. He's a guy that drives on the ball. He tackles well. Delpit's going to be in a contract here. He can move down to the box if you need him. He's also elite at that one high hat. I think he makes this defense even more elite. And the argument people have is that he doesn't score points, and that's fair. But I will tell you, guys like this impact a game where they create short fields. They make big plays in big situations. They're just guys who, for some reason, when they're on the field, good things happen. Like I said, I've watched a lot of film the last, especially last month and a half. Caleb Downs is without question. Now, if you ask me who I would take if it wouldn't be a Caleb Downs, it'd be Jeremiah Love. And I know everybody wants a receiver, but Jeremiah Love is the best offensive weapon in this draft, and I think he's has the same impact on the offensive side of the ball. But make no mistakes, I'm not filling holes with the draft. I'm taking guys who are better, and I think Caleb Downs is the best player in this draft.
All right, so Caleb Downs at 6. When we move on to pick 24 in the first round, we've got 2 guys. First one, Casey Concepcion. Folks that watch know I don't like the drops. Take us through what there is to like about Concepcion.
Well, the drops are a real concern, but you're going to see here what he does best. He's just a guy. These guys I like. I think Browns need easy yards, and I know you and I talk every week, once or twice a week at least, and we always talk about guys. There needs to be guys that can make things happen. That doesn't always have to be perfect. And you see these little bubble screens, these little touch passes. We used to call these extended runs. Now, he can run all the route tree. He can do different things. You're going to see him here on a slant route, taking it, get into the secondary. Now, he's had some issues with drops, but I do think he's a natural catcher of the football. I just think he has lapses in concentration. You can see him here. The ball gets in there, catches it with his hands. Now, those concerns for me are real, and that's why I think he's not higher than he is. This is a guy who might be as good in the draft as anybody besides Jeremiah Love when he gets the ball in his hands. And as an offensive coordinator, I look for a number of things. But I tell you what, if I'm the Cleveland Browns and I have trouble scoring points, if I can't get Jeremiah Love, then I'm taking Casey Concepcion or maybe Omar Cooper or maybe somebody who is going to get me easy yards every time they touch it. The Browns right now, for 6 years, have had to have 11 guys do it right every play to be successful. It just can't happen at the NFL level. This is the guy. The drops are a concern, but the ability to run with the ball after the catch sells me, and I would run up to the podium if he's around at pick 24.
All right, so the other guy at 24 that you talked about, if he's there, is Omar Cooper. What do you see with Cooper?
Well, the reason I have both of them because I don't think Omar Cooper's going to make it, because here's a guy, again, so a lot of similar things. He's a little bit thicker than Concepcion and catches the ball a little bit cleaner, but this is the guy who can play inside, outside. He runs great routes. You see a sluggo route there. I like his versatility. He for me, behind Tyson, this is the guy that you can put inside and outside to run the full tree without a drop-off either way. But again, a guy with a thick lower body, and some guys are just really good football players. And obviously they have to have measurements, all those things that we talk about all the time, but this is a football player first. Love when he gets the ball in hand. He's a high-level competitor. He's a guy that competes on every single play. The Browns need guys who love to play football. The Browns need guys who make plays and kind of pick their team up. Omar Cooper did that this year against high-level competition. Shout out my draft board. Going into this year, I didn't even have him in my top 70. Now I got him in my top 25. Just a great football player is going to make some team very happy.
All right, so you go safety, you go wide receiver in the first 2 rounds. Everybody's saying, what about the tackle? Well, you address that in the 3rd round. You go with Max Iannuchor from Arizona State. Kind of a guy who's raw. Take us through what you see with him.
Well, him and Monroe Freeling are the 2 guys who are really, really raw. You can see him at right tackle. I think he can play both. This is the guy that just started playing football. You can see the feet. And for me, everything starts with the feet, and at all levels of football, but especially offensive line. You can see the physicality there in the All-Star game. Again, just a kid that is kind of learning the game. He can mirror people. So if you think of like a basketball player playing defense, right now that's what he does. I had a kid that was a really good basketball player for me in high school, came out, and we'd use those athletic skills on the football field. And you can see, first and foremost, hand placement, but more than anything, he's just got really light feet. This is a massive human being who's only going to get better. So like I said, I love him and Monroe Freeling as guys who are going to be great down the road. Now, if you take this guy and he's not quite ready, you can still bump out Jenkins to a tackle. You still got DeJuan Jones. You're not empty there. But this is a guy that will be available, I think, on the second day because he doesn't have a ton of experience. But you want to talk about an upside. There's a lot of really good tackles, better than people think. There is no tackle in this draft that has better upside or higher ceiling than Max Iannuchor. This is a kid that has great light feet, big, physical, and is only going to get better as he plays the game.
All right, so coming back then in the 4th round, another guy that we've heard tied to the Browns some at this spot, pick 70, Oscar Delp, tight end from Georgia.
Now, it's funny because I have Oscar Delp going at 70. Some people think it's too high. Some people think it's too low. So you never know in the NFL drafts who's going to be there. Oscar Delp is a guy that fits Todd Monken's offense. And when I mean that, he's the guy that is going to be a matchup problem for safeties and linebackers. He's also a guy that can split out. He's very position flexible. You see him here on the skinny post. Really good throw by the quarterback and does a great job of catching the ball with his hands. You'll see him here on a wheel off a quick screen. Does a great job in the seam on the sideline there catching the ball. This is the guy that with Monken is trying to find matchups. This is the guy right now at the NFL level can win matchups against tight ends, against linebackers and safeties as a tight end. Now, has a lot of work to do in the run game. Has a lot of work to do, physicality-wise. He's not afraid to block. He's just got to learn how to do it and grow into his body. This is a great tight end. I actually have him as my number 2 tight end in front of Eli Stowers, who everybody likes. I think this guy is a super talent. And for some reason, I just think he's going to be a great pro quickly in the NFL.
All right, so then at 4, in the 4th round, 107, you come back with another wide receiver, a smaller school guy that kind of is rising as people get to know him a little bit better. Ted Hurst from Georgia State. Take us through what you see with him.
So you get the inside guy with Concepcion or Omar Cooper. Now you get the outside guy, the guy who's outside catching the fades, the post routes, the comebacks, the digs, the guy who's a red zone nightmare, the guy who is long. Plays, not only is he 6'3", but he plays really long. You see him high point the ball there in the red zone. He's a guy that does have a little bit of shake, but he's a guy that can get in the seam, and that's what quarterback friendly is right there. That big body shows up in zone routes. Now, he's a small school guy. However, the traits match up. So if you think about what the Browns need, they need a lot. Now, if they draft a guy like Ted Hurst, this is the guy that I think has very similar skill set to Seth Tillman. And I still think Seth Tillman, if he stays healthy, can be outstanding, especially in Monken-style offense. So if they take Ted Hurst or a big body guy, Brazil, Malachi Fields, these guys who are long, then it tells you what they think about Seth Tillman. If they don't, it tells you that they think they can get something more out of Seth Tillman. But if they go this route and they don't go early because they have other needs, this is the guy that'll be around that has all the skills that all these other guys have. Catches the ball, strong hands, good route runner, can play inside or outside, really good football player.
So you have him taking a safety, then you get a couple of wide receivers, a tackle, and a tight end in the first 4 rounds. Lance, looking forward to Thursday. Thursday and Friday we'll be here breaking down draft picks and kind of how it relates to the Browns. Looking forward to it.
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait. You know, doing this last year, you talk about like what teams need and what teams think shock you, and you know, how the draft, we all think we know what's going to happen in the draft. You get paralysis from analysis. I've broken down all these guys for months, and you think you have a good idea of not only what the Browns are going to do, but what the Raiders are going to do and what the Broncos are going to do. Then all of a sudden, it's not that at all. So I look forward to being with you and going over these pick by pick to see what these teams, what they address. And it's going to be highly interesting what the Browns do with the 6th pick. The pick's been all over the board. I can't wait to see it.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Looking forward to Thursday and Friday with you. Thanks very much, Lance.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out. Always really good film breakdown, video analysis. Cleveland.com as well as The Plain Dealer. Again, he and I will be in studio for rounds 1, 2, and 3 of the draft. That's Thursday night, Friday night. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.